Hello. Today I'd like to talk about what is undoubtedly the greatest moral and humanitarian disaster in the entire universe. And that is, of course, as we all know, when
Muslim women take off their hijab.
Naturally, for fundamentalists like Ali Dawah, when Muslim women are compelled to remove their hijab, this represents, by far, the greatest injustice a woman could ever face. Things like women literally getting murdered for choosing not to wear the hijab don't so much as register on their moral radar. So, let's watch Ali Dawah going completely ballistic when French schoolgirls are seen complying with their school's regulations by removing their hijabs before class.
These evil, evil countries. I watched this video and it boiled my blood. Wallahi, I felt like driving to France and going to that school and standing in front of that school and telling the sisters, don't take your hijabs off, my dear sisters. Here is a video that will boil your blood. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroy these people. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroy these people who oppress people just because they want to obey their Lord. Look at this video and tell me it doesn't boil your blood. May Allah deal with these individuals, these scums, and this Macron will spit in his face. Or spit in his face. These evil people who do not even allow a Muslim woman to observe her hijab. They are trying to strip you, not of your hijab. They are trying to strip you, not of your abaya. They are trying to strip you of your Islam. Wake up, O Muslims in France. There's 10 million of you. Wake up. Wake up.
So, as you can see, for Ali Dawah, this kind of thing is pretty much Armageddon. So what is all the fuss about? Here is the clip that he is wetting his pants over.
This is the sign, my sisters. Subhanallah, those are sisters from France where they are asked to remove their hijab before going into a school. Subhanallah, but what you are saying is actually worse than what you think. Those videos are from the news asking the school to forbid even the abaya that they're wearing. Like, why are they removing the scarf and not the abaya? This is what they're talking about. This is the sign for you, my sisters, to be grateful to Allah, to be observant with your hijab, because those girls will give anything to have your right to wear the hijab properly, the neck, the arms, with the sun coming. Sisters, be strong with your hijab and be grateful.
First thing, let's be clear. In my opinion, these types of bans on what people wear are wrong. And Ali Dawah is correct to oppose it. However, let's keep things in perspective. These such bans in government buildings in France, which incidentally include all religious symbols, not just Islamic ones, have been around since 2004. So don't be fooled by this clip trying to create sensationalism by talking up a hidden camera as if it's a new scandal that is only now being exposed. This practice has been an established part of French culture for almost 20 years, and the girls in this clip seem to be coping just fine with it. And besides, it's not the case at all, as Ali Dawah and his ilk try and make out, that they are being stripped of their Islam. I mean, don't these people notice that these girls are arriving to school in their hijab and Islamic attire? They are clearly allowed to practice their religion, which includes wearing their hijab, outside the confines of the school, in public. So let's not get hysterical and pretend this is Muslims not being able to practice their religion in France. And one final point on this clip. Doesn't anyone else find it a little creepy, the idea of someone setting up a hidden camera to watch girls taking off their clothes? I'd like to know whether or not these schoolgirls gave consent to this little stunt. Let's now return to Ali Dawah's response. And I'd like to pick on one particular gem he came up with during his rant.
Wallahi, it's better you don't go to school. Wallahi, it is better that you do not go to school and take the hijab off. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide for you. If your parents are sending you to school because they see that as more important, and they see that as more important than you wearing the hijab.
Here we see the extreme lengths these fundamentalists will go to in their obsession over women's dress, where they see the wearing of a piece of clothing a bigger priority than something so fundamentally important as education. I mean, this is Taliban territory. The mentality that says depriving women of their right to an education is more important than exposing their hair. And of course, like the Taliban, Ali Dawah, a man, presumes to know best for women. But what Ali Dawah and his ilk don't bother to acknowledge is that education and seeking knowledge is one of the most important things in Islamic doctrine. Far more important, dare I say, than wearing hijab. Firstly, what does the Quran say? The Quran is just chock-a-block full of commands to seek knowledge and education. Whereas, on the subject of women covering their hair with a hijab, the Quran is completely silent. This I covered in a previous video. Then, there is the hadith literature, which as we know, traditionalists like Ali Dawah consider more important than the Quran itself. And interestingly enough, we also find many alleged prophetic sayings that emphasize the importance of education. And what do the hadiths say on the topic of hijab and the requirement for women to cover their hair? It may surprise you to learn that there is actually very little. In contrast to the multiple number of clear hadiths instructing Muslims to seek education and teach others, there is in fact not a single reliable hadith that clearly instructs Muslim women to cover their hair. Yes, you heard me right, not a single one. There are a few hadiths that instruct women to wear a head cover, but specifically for the purpose of praying only. But when it comes to a clear command, or even just guidance from the Prophet for women to cover their hair as a general injunction, there is just one single hadith that traditionalists can find, and it is not considered authentic, according to the standard rules of authentication that traditionalists set themselves. This is because it is what's known as a mursal tradition. That is, there is a critical break in the chain of transmission. In this case, the first person who allegedly received the hadith from the original narrator, who was the Prophet's wife Aisha, never even met Aisha. And therefore, this is automatically an unreliable hadith, according to the hadith scholars' own criteria. The only other hadith the traditionalists can point to justify mandatory hijab is one that describes what a group of women did as soon as the so-called veiling verse in the Quran was revealed. This is verse 24:31, where women are instructed to drop their khimar over their garment openings. There are a couple of different versions, but basically, both describe how the women, using the Arabic, iktamad, themselves, which is using the verbal form of the word khimar. What this means is kind of ambiguous. Does it mean the women actually covered their heads, or more likely, does it mean they took some khimars, which were a fairly generic covering, typically, but not exclusively used as head coverings, and simply did with them exactly what the Quran instructed to do with them, i.e. cover their garment openings with it? If the women really were responding to what the Quran specifically instructed them to do, then they would have been concerned with covering specifically what the Quran told them to cover. Keep in mind that the Quran only mentions the khimar in the context of covering things like the bosom. Therefore, why would women reacting to this verse think it's a command to cover their hair? Either way, what is undeniable is that the traditionalists who translate this hadith lie through their teeth when they describe it as covered their heads with the khimars and even worse, covered their face with them. So as we can see, in terms of actual Islamic doctrine, there really is no comparison between the injunctions for women to cover their hair and the injunctions to seek knowledge and education. And yet these fundamentalists like Ali Dawah have the audacity to lecture women about how, somehow, Islam says that covering up is by far more important. How do they possibly get away with this crap? But really, we shouldn't be surprised by any of this. In my previous response video to Ali Dawah, I demonstrated how he objectifies women and reduces their worth as human beings almost solely to their physical outward appearances. So this unhinged rant is perfectly consistent with that mentality. Women shouldn't have a right to education and attaining knowledge because their physical appearance is more important. Ultimately, this just exposes Ali Dawah for who he really is. A misogynistic and shallow extremist who is only concerned with the most superficial aspects of his religion, such as what people wear. Thanks for watching. Feel free to comment and subscribe to this channel.